After the burglary, I no longer dared to sleep in my own home. The familiar room suddenly became a nightmare. My heart raced in the darkness. In despair, I called my son, hoping to stay with him for a few days, but instead of a comforting embrace, I got a cold response: "I don't need another mouth to feed in this house." Those words cut deeper than any wound. I used to believe that in hardship, family would be the place to turn to, yet my own flesh and blood turned their back on me when I was at my weakest. Unwilling to accept it, I decided to see my son without warning him, and at that moment, before my eyes appeared a scene that would shatter this family forever. A picture frame shattered on the wooden floor. Ella's smiling face, my wife's peeking through the broken glass. From my trembling hand, a bunch of keys slipped and clattered sharply, signaling a truth I wasn't ready to face. Before I tell you what I saw inside that house, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. What time is it where you're hearing this story? Because what I discovered next changed everything, forever. The house that had been with me for over 20 years now looked like a battlefield after a storm. The picture frame shattered, the coffee table overturned, papers scattered all over the floor. I stepped in, my shoes crunching on broken glass, the sound tearing through the last peaceful memories. I dropped my suitcase right at the threshold, my hand trembling as I grabbed the wall to steady myself. My heart felt like it was being squeezed tight. Each step deeper into the house was another cut into my already fragile trust. The empty TV stand, the speaker set Ella had saved for months to give me on our anniversary, was gone too. Even the small things, worthless to outsiders but full of memories, were gone. I staggered into the kitchen. The cabinet doors were wide open, spoons and forks scattered everywhere. The coffee can was tipped over. Coffee grounds spilled across the white floor. The kitchen, where Ella and I used to sit for hours, her gentle smile every morning, now only holds the musty smell and the strong scent of strangers. I climbed the stairs, each step heavy with weight. The bedroom was no better, drawers ripped open, the mattress pushed out of place. Ella's music box lay tilted, silent, Suisse. The jewelry she left behind, from the wedding ring to the pearl earrings her mother gave her, all vanished. But it was the study that truly broke me. The safe door was ajar, empty inside. My father's gold pocket watch, passed down through 3 generations, was gone. The cash stash, the savings bonds, all cleanly taken. I sank into a chair, hands clutching my head. Who could know so much? Only those who have stepped through this house would know the hiding spots. No, I was away exactly 2 weeks. That thought hit me, cold like ice running backward through my veins. In panic, I grabbed my phone. My trembling finger dialed the familiar number 911. A female dispatcher's calm voice came through, steady amid the storm inside me. My house was broken into. I just returned from California. Everything was destroyed. No, they were already gone. But they took everything. They knew exactly where to look. Police car lights cast red and blue shadows on the cracked walls of my memories. 2 officers entered. One seasoned, with graying hair, the other young, carrying a toolkit. They worked professionally, taking photos, collecting evidence. Everything suddenly felt foreign, as if my home had turned into a cold crime scene. "This wasn't kids messing around," the older officer said gravely. "Someone who knows your habits knows where the safe is." This is the work of someone familiar. A short list came to mind: a few neighbors, some relatives, and Melvin, my only son. The cold refusal over the phone the night before echoed in my ears. "You don't need another mouth to feed. Could it be?" I sank into the chair, my eyes gliding over an old photo fallen on the floor, me and Melvin on his high school graduation day, my arm around his shoulder. That innocent smile from back then now felt like a deep wound in my heart. The young police officer turned back, holding a notebook. I pressed my lips together tightly. The answer echoed from the depths of my heart. More painful than the loss itself, it was those closest to me. That night, I sat alone in the silent house, surrounded only by the black powder marks left by the police when they rolled fingerprints. The belongings were scattered, but the biggest turmoil wasn't the material loss. It was the growing suspicion inside me. Someone knew my schedule well. Someone knew I would be away for 2 weeks, and that person couldn't be a stranger. When the clock struck 10 at night, I held the phone, hesitated, then dialed Melvin's number. My son answered after a few rings, his voice hoarse and rushed. "Melvin, our house was robbed. They took everything. The TV, Mom's jewelry, even Grandpa's watch. Dad can't stay here tonight. I want to come over for a few days while you fix things." I thought my son was shocked, getting ready to comfort me, but the reply that came next made my heart feel like it had fallen into an abyss. "Dad, find a hotel to stay at." I was stunned into silence. Over 35 years of raising, worrying, arranging a wife for him, all now summed up in one cold sentence. I wanted to scream, but my throat was paralyzed. "Melvin, I just need the sofa for a few days. This was also your home, where you grew up. I need family right now. You figure it out yourself." The line went silent. Then the harsh beep, beep sounded. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling hollow inside. My late wife once told me, "Silas, never lose faith in your son. After all, he's family." But now, that trust was torn apart by a bitter rejection. I couldn't take it. The next morning, I drove straight to Melvin's house. The small apartment, wild grass growing outside, cracks on the doorstep still unrepaired. I pressed the doorbell. After a moment, he opened the door, his face gaunt, eyes dark and sunken. Seeing me, he froze for a second, then forced a weak smile. "Dad, why didn't you call ahead? I called, but you said you didn't need another mouth to feed." I thought I should come to talk. The house was messy. Dishes piled on the table, bills stacked in the corner. The smell of cigarettes mixed with beer hung heavy in the air. I sat down on the old sofa, watching my son nervously sorting through papers. "Son," I said calmly, "last night I just needed a place to rest. Why would you say that to me?" He slipped up. He was just tired from work. I looked around the room, my eyes resting on the wooden shelf near the window. There were some framed photos and a few random things. But what stunned me was the gold pocket watch, my father's watch, the one that had vanished from the safe during the robbery. I recognized it immediately, a small scratch on the face, a bend on the winding crown from when I accidentally dropped it at age 12. "No mistaking it?" "Nice," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where did you get it?" "It looked cheap, so I bought it." I nodded, my heart tightening. My son looked me straight in the eye and lied. Leaving that house, my steps felt as heavy as carrying a boulder. On the empty street, the cold wind blowing, only one truth remained in my mind. The first betrayal had been revealed by my own son. Since leaving Melvin's house, my mind has never been at peace. The image of the gold pocket watch haunts me, shining in my mind like a silent accusation. I recognized every familiar detail: the small scratch on the glass face, the slightly bent knob, the dull brass shine aged by time, all proving it was a family heirloom. But the most painful thing was that it was sitting right there on the wooden shelf in my son's house, the place that should have been absolutely trustworthy. 2 days later, I called Melvin again, this time just wanting to hear his voice to make a judgment. "Son, how's work today?" His voice was tense and brief. "It's okay, Dad. Why are you calling again?" I gently asked, "Did you really buy that watch at the pawn shop?" There was a few seconds of silence. Then Melvin forced a laugh. "Yeah, that's right." "Don't worry, it's just decoration." That evasiveness only made my suspicion grow stronger. I've been an engineer all my life, used to reading blueprints, spotting even the smallest errors. And my son's voice, every hesitant word, every forced laugh was a clear error. That afternoon, I went to neighbor Roy's to borrow some things. Roy happened to mention, last week, I saw Melvin's car parked in front of your house twice. "But you were in California then." I even waved, but he hurried away immediately. I froze. So Melvin was at my house right around the time of the theft. All the pieces started fitting together, chilling me to the bone. That night, I couldn't bear it and decided to confront my son directly. When I knocked, Melvin opened the door with a surprised look, dark circles under his eyes, clothes disheveled. In the living room, overdue bills were piled up, a few gambling magazines left open on the table, empty beer cans scattered everywhere. I sat down, calm but firm. "Melvin, son, I need to hear the truth. Why did Roy say he saw your car at my house while I was away?" He hesitated, then quickly answered, I just stopped by to check on the house. I was worried about your place." "Check on it." I looked him straight in the eye. "Then why didn't you say anything when I called for help? Why did you say you didn't want another mouth to feed at home?" Melvin was flustered, his eyes darting nervously. He forced a smile. "I didn't mean to," I sighed. My voice caught. It disappeared from the safe. "Tell me the truth. Did you take it?" Melvin's face went rigid. A mask cracked right before my eyes. He turned away, his voice sharp. "You're just pushing us further apart." But that fierce reaction gave everything away. An innocent person doesn't need to shout to hide. I stayed silent, looking at the son I once held when he first learned to walk. Now, in front of me, stood a trembling man, secretive and full of lies. I no longer recognized my own son. As I left the apartment, the cold night wind hit my face. I knew Melvin's mask was starting to slip. He could keep denying, come up with excuses, but the truth was out and undeniable. And I, as a father, stood at a painful crossroads: stay silent to keep what's called family, or move forward to uncover the harsh truth. 3 weeks passed since I left Melvin's apartment, but my heart never found peace. I began tracking my wallet every morning, carefully noting every expense as a way to keep control. Then, my worst fear came true. $500 vanished overnight. I sat silently at the living room table, my wallet wide open before me. My hands trembled not from age this time, but from the shame rising inside me. I could no longer comfort myself with "I must be forgetful." I knew exactly where every dollar was kept, and now it was gone. A soft whistle came from the bathroom, along with the sound of running water. Melvin! He just stepped out of the bathroom, looking relaxed, humming a carefree tune. Meanwhile, I, his father, sat here, grinding my teeth, knowing he had just emptied my wallet. That afternoon, I pretended to visit him again. Helen, his wife, was working the evening shift, leaving just the two of us at home. Melvin acted normal, pouring beer and turning on the TV as if nothing had happened. But in his eyes, there was something evasive. "Melvin," I said slowly, eyes fixed on the screen, "have you ever felt confused, forgetful about money, for example?" That's how old people are. Sometimes they spend and then forget, right? I clenched my hand tightly under the table. It was that tone, the way he used old people as an excuse, that made me feel even more ashamed. It wasn't just about losing money, but being looked down on by my own son, seen as a confused, helpless old man. That night, in the quiet living room, I sat staring at the family photo hanging on the wall. The day Melvin graduated college, he hugged my shoulder, beaming with pride. I believed I had raised a man who valued honor. But now, he's not only stealing money, he's insulting his own father's memory and dignity. His words echoed in my head. We don't need another mouth to feed. Old people forget things. Each phrase stabbed my heart like a knife. That night, I couldn't get a wink of sleep. I heard faint footsteps on the stairs, then the soft creak of a door opening. I held my breath. The hallway light spilled in. Melvin's shadow slipped by, his steps familiar and deliberate. I knew what he was up to again. I lay still, eyes closed, but tears welled at the corners. I, a father, was forced to pretend to be asleep so my son could steal more easily. There's no greater shame than that. When I heard the door close, I opened my eyes. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating my face, a face etched with pain and anger. I whispered, "Did you think I'd stay silent forever?" "You're wrong. I know I have to act. If I stay silent, I'll lose not just money, but all my dignity," sobbed. And that's something I will never allow. The next morning, I put on my old coat and drove downtown. Throughout the journey, my heart pounded not because of age, but because of the determination that had taken shape in my mind. I needed clear, undeniable evidence. I could no longer rely on suspicion or feelings alone. I would use the truth to expose my son. The bright glass door of the electronics store on the boulevard reflected sunlight into my eyes. I pushed the door open and the bell chimed. A young employee approached with a friendly smile. I lowered my voice, speaking slowly. "It records at night." "The image is clear." He nodded and led me to the display shelf. Dozens of small boxes were neatly arranged, advertising all the features: infrared, motion sensors, phone connectivity. I stopped in front of a compact, sleek black model, palm-sized. "This one records for 12 continuous hours, has infrared and 1080p resolution. You can connect it to your phone and watch live anytime," the employee explained. I nodded, decisive. On the way home, the small box sat neatly on the passenger seat. But to me, it weighed like the evidence of an entire case. I had spent 40 years as an engineer, used to solving problems with logic. Now the solution to the disgrace in this family lay inside that box. When I got home, Helen had already left for work, and Melvin was out as well. The house was quiet, a perfect moment. I opened the box and installed the device following the instructions. The small camera was cleverly placed behind an old wedding photo frame, just enough to clearly see the bedside cabinet where I usually kept my wallet. I tested it. Closing the curtains and turning off the lights, the phone screen still showed every detail in the room through infrared light. I walked past, immediately receiving an alarm notification. Everything worked perfectly. That night, I carefully placed $300 in the wallet, deliberately leaving a corner of the money exposed. Next to it, the familiar glass of water remained still. But in my heart, it was no longer just a glass of water. It would become a witness. As darkness enveloped the house, I lay down on the bed, pretending to be asleep. The small light on the camera blinked once and then disappeared. The room fell silent, with only the sound of my pounding heart. Helen stopped by to say goodnight. Unaware of the plan I had prepared, Melvin worked the night shift, but I knew his habits. He would come back late, sneakily. And then, tomorrow morning, I wouldn't be the old man looked down on and humiliated anymore. I would have proof. Proof to force him to face the truth he had been avoiding for so long. At 7 o'clock the next morning, I opened my eyes out of habit. The first thing I did was reach for my wallet. It was still on the nightstand, but when I opened it, the bills I had purposely placed there the night before were gone, no money left at all. I wasn't surprised. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. I knew I had what I needed. My hand trembling, I opened my phone and tapped the camera app. A video was marked at 2:43 a.m. My heart tightened, but I took a deep breath and pressed play. The screen lit up. The room appeared in faint infrared light. The door crept open, and the shadow of a man stepped in. He moved like someone familiar with every corner of the house. Without hesitation, he went straight to the nightstand. His face appeared clearly on the screen. "No mistaking it, Melvin, my son." I sat frozen in shock. He opened the wallet, quickly took all the money, glanced over it, then stuffed it into his pocket. Every move was practiced and precise, as if he'd done this many times before. Pain coiled tightly inside my chest, but that wasn't the worst part. Melvin put the wallet back, then turned to the glass of water I'd left by the bed. He picked it up, looked at it for a moment, and deliberately, slowly spat into it. I jumped up from the chair, dropping my phone onto the table. My heart ached sharply, and my vision blurred. Each image on the screen stabbed deep into my bones like a knife, not just a thief. He despised me, humiliated me with that disgusting act. So many times over the past few months, I've emptied that seemingly harmless glass. Each time I watch, the truth gets even harsher. This is no longer suspicion, no longer speculation. This is undeniable evidence. I saved the footage both on my device and in the cloud, as carefully as if it were a treasure. Because now I have justice in my hands. That morning, Helen was still cheerfully cleaning downstairs, laughing as if nothing had happened. I sat in my chair, looking at my daughter with a heavy heart. She trusts her husband completely, unaware that the man she shares her bed with every night is betraying the trust of the whole family. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. It wasn't the right time. That afternoon, I called Jim, an old colleague who has stood by me for 20 years. His voice came through the phone, deep and steady. I choked out. The camera captured it clearly. He took the money and did things unforgivable. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Jim sighed. "Sure. I have the video." Jim spoke slowly, as if weighing each word. "Either stay silent to preserve what's called family, or use this truth to save yourself and maybe your son, too." I sat quietly, watching the fading light outside the window. In my hand, the phone still showed Melvin's face, clear under the infrared lens. The son I taught to ride a bike, the one I comforted when he broke his arm at 10, had now become a traitor, treating his father like a joke. I tightened my grip on the phone and whispered, "And Dad will make you face the truth." Helen cooked a stew, trying to create warmth in a house already cracked. The scent of spices filled the air, but at the dinner table, the atmosphere was heavy, like a thick fog. Melvin sat across from me. He ate slowly, his eyes flicking toward me, then quickly looking away. I know he's watching closely. As for me, every time I see that face, I picture him sneaking to open my wallet and then spitting into my glass of water. That contempt feels like a slow, burning fire inside. I picked up a piece of bread and calmly said, "Just one small slip-up, and the money disappears immediately." Helen looked up anxiously and asked. I smirked and looked Melvin straight in the eye. "Sometimes he walks right under this roof." The sound of a spoon dropping into a bowl rang sharply. Melvin froze, his face briefly flushing red. Then he slammed his hands on the table and snarled, Helen said nervously. Dad, you're just talking nonsense. But I'm not taking that back. I looked straight into my son's eyes and spoke steadily. An honest man fears no truth. Melvin forced a smile, but his eyes flashed with anger. You should worry about your own health instead of digging into others. I put the spoon down and was silent for a few seconds. Then slowly said, Helen asked blankly. I turned to my daughter and spoke gently. Don't worry. Melvin went pale, the spoon slipping from his hand onto the table. He tried to force a smile, but his trembling hands gave him away. Helen looked at her husband, confused. You two seem to be hiding something from her. I forced myself to stand, resting my hands on the chair's back. Daughter, sometimes the truth needs time to come out. But when it does, no one can deny it anymore. Melvin slammed the table hard and stood up abruptly. If you have any proof, then show it. I looked at him, my gaze cold as steel, and said, But remember, Melvin, every one of your actions has been recorded. Helen was speechless, her eyes darting between her father and husband. Fear crept into her gaze. As for Melvin, he retreated to his room, trying to swallow his anger, but his tense shoulders showed he knew the mask had cracked. When the door slammed shut, I sat down, feeling as heavy as a stone. The confrontation had begun, and soon the truth would explode, dragging the whole family into an unavoidable storm. That night, the house was engulfed in a silence full of suspicion. Helen had fallen asleep exhausted after the argument, while I lay in my room, staring at the ceiling. On the bedside table, the familiar wallet was gone, replaced by a trap I had carefully prepared, a stun wallet filled with counterfeit bills that looked real. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my breathing steady as if I were sound asleep. The clock ticked past 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Just as I expected, the door hinge creaked softly. A familiar figure slipped inside. Melvin! He moved slowly, avoiding any creaking floorboards, heading straight to the bedside table where the wallet was waiting. I heard the wallet snap open. Then, Melvin jumped back, threw the wallet on the floor, and the fake bills scattered everywhere. He clutched his trembling hand, eyes wide open, breath rapid. I turned on the light. The yellow light flooded the room, exposing the humiliating scene. I sat up, trying to keep my voice calm. Melvin stammered, panic in his eyes. I bent down, picked up a fake bill from the floor, and held it up, saying, Melvin's face went pale, his lips trembling as he said, The cameras captured everything, Melvin. Not just you taking the money, but also you spitting into Dad's cup. The whole room fell into a deadly silence. Melvin's eyes widened in true panic. Monsieur, times. He stepped back, stumbled against the bed, sat down heavily, breathing ragged. Helen's voice rang out in the hallway. Alarmed, the door burst open. Helen appeared in her robe, hair disheveled. Her gaze landed on the scattered bills, the wallet lying open, and her husband's shaking hand. What is going on here? I looked straight at my daughter, my voice low but firm. For many months now, and tonight, I caught you red-handed. Helen looked at Melvin, her eyes filled with shock and fear. No, it can't be. Cleo, say something. Melvin hung his head, sweat dripping down his forehead. He whispered. She stepped back, clutching the doorframe tightly. Her voice broke out. The one who raised you. What else have you done behind my back? Melvin didn't answer. His whole body shrank. The mask of dutiful son, good husband shattered into pieces before everyone's eyes. I slowly stood up, holding my phone. This is just the beginning, Melvin. All the evidence is already here. You think I'm old and confused, unable to see the truth? You were wrong. Helen burst into tears, covering her face as she ran out of the room. Her sobs echoed down the stairs. Melvin sat on the floor, holding his head, defeated and humiliated. In the brightly lit room, the man who once arrogantly challenged me had completely fallen apart. The next morning, the once familiar house now echoed with strange noises. No longer Helen's soft singing in the kitchen, but the sound of cardboard boxes being dragged and cabinet doors opening and closing. I sat in the armchair, holding a cup of coffee, watching my daughter quietly pack her things. Helen's face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying all night. She didn't say much, carefully folding clothes and packing them into a suitcase. Every movement was resolute, as if her pain had turned into determination. Melvin was different. He paced the room, hastily throwing things into boxes, his face full of anger. Every time he looked at me, he shot hateful glances but didn't dare say a word. He knew that if I opened my phone, all the evidence would play back. Finally, Helen collapsed onto the edge of the bed, her hands covering her face. Her voice was choked, but clear. I defended you in front of Dad, even when all signs were against you. But last night, everything became clear. You didn't just steal. You even spat into Dad's glass of water. What worse thing could you possibly do? Melvin was silent. His hands trembled, clutching his shirt tightly, then letting go. No apology, no explanation. Helen took a deep breath, stood up, eyes brimming with tears but resolute. Today, but from now on, don't expect me to trust you like before. Melvin's eyes widened. No, Helen replied coldly. I'm leaving with you. But you've lost everything? You lost my trust and Dad's. You're nothing but a shadow of yourself, he growled, turning to me, venom in his voice. You want to destroy my family? Now it's exactly what you've done. I calmly responded. You destroyed it yourself, not Dad. That afternoon, Melvin's car was parked in the yard. He threw a box into the truck bed. The door slammed shut. Helen walked slowly, carrying the last suitcase. Before getting in, she stopped in front of me, tears streaming down. Without Dad, I'd probably still be blind. I placed my hand on her shoulder, softening my voice. You just loved too much. But remember, true love never means closing your eyes to the truth. Helen nodded, hugging me tightly. That hug was both a goodbye and a promise that she'd find herself again. Melvin started the engine. The motor growled. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, eyes blazing with hatred. I looked straight into his eyes, calm. The one who will regret it will be you. The car rolled away, disappearing down the street. I stood on the porch, watching, feeling heavy-hearted but also relieved. The traitor was exposed, the mask fell off, and the final blow landed. Melvin lost everything: trust, love, and honor. The house fell silent again. I turned inside and sat down in the armchair. The coffee in my hand had gone cold, but inside I was burning with one truth: I had reclaimed my dignity, not through violence, but through justice. As Melvin's car engine faded down the road, I stood on the doorstep, silently watching him go. The house suddenly felt strangely vast and quiet. No more arguments, no more secret footsteps in the night. Only me remained, with silent walls and memories torn apart. I went back into the living room and saw a few counterfeit bills still scattered on the floor from the night Melvin was caught. I bent down, picked them up, neatly stacked them, and put them in the drawer. Those bills had fulfilled their mission: to reveal the truth. They were no longer a joke, but a milestone marking the day I reclaimed my own dignity. The next morning, I brewed myself a cup of coffee. For the first time in months, I made just one cup, not considering anyone else. The coffee's aroma spread, bitter yet gentle, reminding me that sometimes pain is also a lesson. I sat down in the armchair, eyes fixed on the photo hanging on the wall. The picture of Melvin's graduation day, my arm over his shoulder, both of us smiling. That image now felt both distant and close. I didn't deny it, because it was a memory of a time when I loved him deeply. But I also knew from now on, the path between my son and me would never be the same. That afternoon, I went to Roy's house, my longtime neighbor. He offered me a cup of hot tea and listened as I told him everything. When I finished, Roy placed his hand on my shoulder and softly said, "Justice isn't always easy, but the truth is what keeps a person standing tall." Those words were like a soothing balm. I realized that even in tragedy, I still had friendship and respect from those who understood the true value of right and wrong. That evening, I opened my old engineer's notebook, where I had recorded hundreds of designs. On the last page, I added a line, "Justice is not about revenge. Justice is about reclaiming the dignity that was trampled." Her voice was tired but firmer than before. "I know you did everything because you wanted me to see the truth. I'm grateful to you." I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "You are strong enough to recognize that now." Helen cried, but in her tears, I heard relief. She had started to break free from the shadow of lies. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the full moon light up the small garden. The house was quiet, but my heart felt an unusual peace. I knew I had passed through the storm. I hadn't lost everything. I still had my dignity, the truth, and the love for my daughter, and the memory of my late wife. Melvin might hate me. He might never forgive me his whole life. But I understand that some wounds need to bleed to have a chance to heal. And I, as a father, chose the hardest path to let the truth do its work. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind whisper through the trees. Deep inside, I felt Ella, my wife, smiling. She would understand that I never let anyone trample on this family's dignity. Tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. My home returned to its natural silence. No more stealthy footsteps in the night. No more suspicious glances or contemptuous words. Just me and the four silent walls, faithful witnesses to everything we endured. Many will ask, was it worth it? Was it worth exposing my son, breaking family bonds just for a few dollars? But for me, the answer is always yes. Because it wasn't about money, it was the dignity that was taken away. I have lived my whole life as an engineer, trusting numbers and truth. When a production line breaks down, you can't ignore it. You have to find the root cause. Family is the same. When my son turned into a liar and a thief, I couldn't just turn a blind eye. If I chose to stay silent, it would mean accepting that lies had won. And then, I would no longer have the right to look at my wife in our old photos, nor the strength to teach my daughter what's right. Some nights, I still lie awake, remembering Melvin from back then, the boy running around the yard with a bright smile. I don't hate those memories. I just hurt because that boy has become a lost man. But justice isn't always sweet. Sometimes, it's the necessary pain for a person to truly face themselves. Helen often calls me. She says life is hard now, but at least she's facing the truth. I hear a maturity in her voice that wasn't there before. As for Melvin, I don't know where he'll end up or what path he'll take. But I believe that one day, when he's brave enough to look back, he'll understand the day he was exposed is also the day he still has a chance to start over. I left the porch and sat down in the old armchair. On the table, my father's pocket watch had been returned by the police after completing the case. I picked it up and listened to the familiar ticking. 3 generations have kept it safe. and I will continue to do so, at least until Melvin truly learns the meaning of responsibility. Next to the watch was a photo of Ella. She smiled gently, as if watching over us. I believe she understands that I didn't let this family be buried under lies. I held on to what mattered most: dignity. And I want to share something with you, the one listening to this story. Sometimes justice doesn't need swords or bloody revenge. Justice can come quietly, through a camera, a digital wallet, or simply the courage to speak the truth. If this story touches you, please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if a loved one betrayed you? Because maybe your answer could be a source of strength for someone else out there, those who are also lost between betrayal and justice.